Hello again, everybody. This video is specific for the statistics class, so you should have already watched the first part of the first video. We went through a lot of the generics of the class, the asynchronous nature, the whole setup, that you'll get the weekly email, that'll contain all the information, the videos that'll be posted on YouTube. What else do we have? That we have Blackboard as our main hub. So we've already gone through all of that. You could always go to Blackboard, get all the information necessary, but you definitely want to be making sure that you're getting my emails, also reading them, and again, that the videos, that these are our class, to make sure that you're watching the videos. So in this part, again, we get more specific to all what is statistics about. And we're going to go through, you've got two syllabi. We've got the department syllabi, that is the one that says, and you notice, again, you don't have to print anything here. Print as much or as little as you like in this class. I'm just using this off of my computer. So we can see the one with the Queensborough Community College heading across the top. That is the department syllabus. And then the second one is short, just has my name on the top. We'll get to that one in a few minutes. So this is Math 336 Statistics. Your prerequisite, you've completed Math 119 or 114 with a C or better, or have a satisfactory score on the placement exam. You could always let me know if you're concerned about that, want to make sure you're in the right place. This is a minor prerequisite that should have been met before this. The hours, excuse me, this has 3 class hours and 1 lab hour, so 4 hours per week. That's our basic setup in person. Let's just take a moment here and talk about schedule. For a general rule of thumb in college, it's not perfect, but a general rule is that for every 1 hour that you spend in class, you spend 1 to 3 hours outside of that class doing work for that class. Maybe that's reading the textbook, doing homework problems, just general review. We're going to see a lot in this class. Just that idea of general review, reading and understanding, that is going to be such a major component, and it takes practice. But that's going to be a major part of something that you have to make sure you're incorporating. So 1 hour in class, 1 to 3 hours outside, preparing for class, doing the homework, doing the extra preparation. You put all that together, that means you should be preparing for 8 to 16 hours per week for this class. That's what you should be thinking about for schedule. Now again, there'll be some weeks, maybe things are a little easier, you're a little ahead, you have some extra time. Some weeks things will be busier. Part of the whole nature of being asynchronous is that you get to set your own schedule. You fall a little behind, you could always kind of catch up, but you can't fall weeks behind, okay? As we go from like 1 week to the next, if you didn't quite finish that previous week, that's gonna be a week to pick it up, to make sure you find extra time. But again, that's part of the luxury. That's one of the benefits that the asynchronous schedule provides. But in general, that's a huge thing to be considering. What are you setting up? How many days a week? What are your time frames? You should at least have a few periods where kind of like class. Okay, I'm going to do Tuesday, Thursday, and make sure I cover my videos. And then I have intentions of doing my homework outside of that. There's some basic scheduling aspects that you definitely want to consider. And some people, it's like week to week that they have to keep adjusting that, and that's fine. But you want to have a plan. You don't want to just be like kind of, freewheeling it every single week. And then before you know it, it's like, wow, you reach Friday. Oh man, I didn't do anything for stats this week. And then you do it another week. And then you've just very quickly dug a hole that's really, really difficult to get out of. So like I said, try and make sure you always want to try and keep up. The idea of studying in math, and I think it's true for any subject, frequency versus duration. The idea that people think that they're going to do these things in one huge block, that some people like, okay, I'm going to give them their weekly load, and that Monday, they're going to get started Monday morning and they're just going to do it all. They're just going to plow through, they're going to watch the videos, they're going to flip through the book, they're going to do some homework, and they're just going to do it all in one huge chunk. That's a fairly terrible approach, everybody. Because what happens is, first off, just to realize that to try and sit down for that long a period of time, for most of us, our brain doesn't work that well that way. To try and give ourselves 1-2 hour time blocks, those are typically very effective time intervals that we could really focus and get a lot done. And then when you try and go past that, you normally start to exhaust yourself. You kind of lose your pace. I mean, even when we talk about in person, you know, if you finish a 2-hour class, just going to a second class, how your brain can be a little tired, and that's still giving you the benefit of there is some time in between, and you're switching up subjects. So that kind of gives the brain a little chance to reset. But if you're doing the same thing, that could really, really be a daunting task. So in general, it's kind of better to break it up. To think about, okay, I want to watch this video and then I want to take a break and then I want to come and do some homework. Or I want to watch a video and do some homework and then I want to take a break and then come back and review a little bit before I get into the next unit. Or I want to finish that second part as well, and at the end of the week I come back and I do some good general review. But see, the point is that duration, the total amount of time you spend, that varies so much, partially because we're very different thinkers, that we process things differently. Some people very quickly catch on and really see what they need to do. Others need a little bit more time to really let that settle. But the other part is that frequency part, that the more often you come back to it, that is a really, really good memory trick. In that sometimes it's even just following directions, looking at the big picture. It doesn't mean you have to have these big time blocks where you're going to go and redo homework problems, but just if you've done your homework, that you take 15 to 30 minutes and flip through your notes. Don't redo problems, but just kind of flip through problems you've already done to remind yourself the pace and the structure. That's going to be a very good habit that from one week to the next keeps you on track and keeps you moving forward. So that's the ideal. Of course, as things come up along the way, as things come up along the way, you want to take notes, you want to be asking questions, but all of that, that's going to be the good habits that gets you through this class. Now, so a lot on timing and schedule, and before I even read the course description, I want to just talk a little bit generically about statistics. Statistics is different, okay? A lot of people, it's a math class. So a lot of people automatically think of it the way they thought of other math classes, where it's all about, you know, x equals 7, there's my answer, or 4x minus 2y, or graph, here's the line that goes with the graph, y equals 1/3 x plus 1. You know, that math stuff, that traditional computation, algebra, graphing, that stuff comes up here, not in major parts. We'll review it. That's one of the things why there is some background. You should have gotten through either through placement or through one of the previous math classes. You should have a little bit of math background for those components, but statistics is more than that. This is a writing intensive class that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And just the reading, writing, arithmetic, all of that really comes together in a stats class. And for that reason, stats is very different compared to other math classes. So for a lot of people, like, math hasn't been their best experience, it's not their favorite subject. You really get a fresh chance here, a fresh shot at starting something new and something different. But you gotta recognize that as the situation. If you still have that same exact approach of math and you think, like, you'll notice when we get deep into the class, you don't get 50 homework problems per section the way you do in an algebra class. You'll see a lot of our sections, you get 5 to 10 homework problems. Now, some of them, the homework problems are a little longer in nature, but the other big aspect of it, it's not just the homework. It's not just can you do this, it's are you getting the thinking? Do you know what it is you're looking for? So just the nature of statistics is different. Chapter 1. All of Chapter 1 will have a whole video talking about what is statistics about? What is the nature of statistics? And that, a lot of it connects with why are you here? Why do you even take this class? So this is something we're going to expand a lot on throughout Chapter 1. And some students almost get a little bored through it, but you gotta listen to it and you gotta read to see all the different examples, to see how much statistics, how much is in the world around us, how often and how necessary it is, how it gets applied to all different fields in all different areas. So, just before I keep getting to the specifics here, I want to do one little quote. We'll bring this up, like I said, in Chapter 1. But there's a very common quote people say in statistics. Statistics doesn't lie, but liars use statistics. And that is one of the biggest things we're going to battle through this class. Because when you have statistics, we need to learn what it is that we can say. Because one of the most common problems through, you could take any level you want, through government, through education, throughout our country, throughout the world, people say things that aren't backed. People have some basic information and they make grand conclusions that does not match up with that basic information. So that's the idea. You have some statistics, and those statistics do tell us something, but liars can say a lot more, can try and take it like statistics says so much more. And you know what? Well, that has been a problem we faced for a long time. It's gotten worse. We don't even have statistics anymore. People just take stuff without any evidence at all and just say stuff that isn't correct. That through the nature of their question, that they are misleading. They are intentionally misleading through the way they present something. We get so much misinformation in our lives. And I'm not just talking about fake news like CNN. No. I don't mean that. They still report, and we can talk about the way they report, and maybe they should highlight different things. I'm talking about when people just say things off the cuff. People see something on Facebook, and now they think they have this massive evidence that supports their opinion. And that is just not the case. So that's just a little taste of why statistics is so important and how it's not just numbers and algebra and graphs. We need to pay attention to language. We need to pay attention to what it is we say, to what is being said to us in the first place, which in these cases means we have to read, and we have to read accurately, and then making sure we report. When we give answers in this class, it's going to be a lot more than just x equals 7. We're going to need units. Maybe it is x equals 7. 7 what? 7 classes, 7 hours, 7 minutes, 7 cars. What is our context? We need units to go with our numerical answers, but often that we need a sentence explaining it as well. So that's where I wanted to start off very first and foremost. Statistics is different. So I want you to be prepared. People who have traditionally been good in mathematics, sometimes they'll get a little thrown off because they don't realize these other components are going to be there. And for other people who have not had the best experiences with mathematics, that they have these extra advantages, that they're like, oh, but I like English, I like history. Well, these things, those skills that come up in those other classes are useful here. And that's why, like I said in the beginning, this class is about it all. Reading, writing, arithmetic, it combines it all. Okay, now let's get back to our syllabus. Let's get to more of these specifics. So the course description, well, this is an introduction to statistics and the use of a professional statistical software package. That's Excel, by the way. We'll use Excel. Excel is a spreadsheet. It's not the only spreadsheet that's available, but it's just a common one. So that's one that we use. But as we get deeper in the class, you'll see you don't have to use Excel. Not all of you even have Excel. So I'm going to give you some pointers. We're going to see how we can use those packages. But again, the packages help us with the number crunching parts. They can make a nice quick graph for us. A graph we could also make by hand, but sometimes it's quicker and neater doing it in one of these packages. Some of the numbers, the data that we have to crunch, we can do it by hand, but these packages can do it faster or can organize the results a little differently. It doesn't excuse anything that we need to do. Excel does not replace anything we need to do. All it will do in this class is give you another option. I want to introduce it. Other people, they like Excel. It's useful for a lot of different purposes, just organization in general. So some people just like it for that. So I want you to see it. And if it's not Excel, other spreadsheets, they're all pretty much the same, just minor little differences in their overall setup, but you'll find pretty much the same options and tools. So we'll get into that, but that's not going to be a part of your grade. And if you're not comfortable with that, it's not something that you're going to be forced to use. So it's a part of the class, but it's not going to replace anything we do in the class. Descriptive statistics, probability, binomial and normal distribution, sampling, confidence intervals, and tests of hypotheses. All that stuff that'll make sense when we're done. As we go along, we'll define all of that. So that's the nature. We're going into very specific applications, uses, introduction to statistics. This is a writing intensive course. Like I said, the nature of statistics, there is writing there, and therefore this has become a writing intensive course. So this will be something else. We talk a lot more as we get a little deeper into the class, but we have to at least make some mention of some aspects here. So for QCC students, all students must take at least 2 classes designated as writing intensive. And by the way, some people, it's almost nicer taking a class like this that's writing intensive. In some ways, because this incorporates other components, the writing, comparatively, the writing can actually be a little bit easier here for some students. But again, you have to take 2 writing intensive courses. Maybe you chose to take this as one of them. Maybe you just needed statistics, so it just worked out that way. The purpose is to facilitate and foster writing abilities at the college level. In this class, as in all writing intensive sections, the following features are incorporated. Students will spend time during the semester writing in the service of learning. A minimum of 10 pages of writing will be assigned. The professor will respond to and return these 10 pages at least once, so you'll have the opportunity to revise before a final grade is given. Writing will be discussed regularly. The written work will be a significant part of the course grade, and at least one exam will have a written component. Let's go back and hit all 6 of those and apply to this class. So you will spend time in the semester writing in the service of learning. Like I said, there's just writing in this class. There are sections here where it just doesn't make any sense to just give a numerical answer. The whole point of our computation is to answer a question. And to answer that question, well, we need a sentence. So, even just at that basic level, so that there will be writing in the service of this discipline. But then beyond that, we're going to have to explain things. This is a class where we're going to have to be able to give examples, especially in the beginning, before we get into like the math heavy stuff, the way a lot of people are traditionally used to seeing it. We get to the first test, and there are people who aren't quite paying attention, and like, what are the questions? And the questions are, in the beginning, what's missing? What else would you want to know? What other information? What else might we want to know? There's going to be a lot of questions about sampling, about looking at some basic graphs, what information is being presented. Well, all that stuff, you have to be able to write me some sentences. Give an example of something that matches this description. We're going to have to be familiar with some terminology. So that way, if I say, give an example of something that meets this description, well, if you know the terminology, well, again, you write a sentence, you give the example, and an example in this class, you're always making it clear why it matches that description. So I don't want to throw too much terminology at you, but if I say, give an example of a situation that has a continuous random variable, well, you would say something like, well, the amount of time students study on it for an exam, and that would be continuous because that time spent is not whole number. And that could, again, we will give that as a specific example later on to make that make sense. But that's how you give an example. It's not just, here's the example. It's, this is the example because this is why it matches that description. So all that takes some basic writing. A minimum of 10 pages will be assigned. That's going to come through 3 different writing assignments. I forget the exact pages off the top of my head, but 3 writing assignments for a total of 10. If I very roughly, we'll see this exactly. I will give you videos for each writing assignment, going through each one. What is the writing assignment? What needs to be done? Giving you tips, talking about how to implement, how to write, all these good tips. But roughly, I think the first one is like 2 to 4 pages. The second one is like 4 to 6 pages. And I think the last one is 3 to 5. So all that adds up and gives us our minimum of 10 pages of writing. The professor will respond to and return these pages. So for each individual assignment, you will get 2 deadlines. And again, we will explain all this more as we go along as reminders, but you will get 2 deadlines. You will have a first submission deadline. That will be the deadline for you to submit, for which I will read your whole paper and give you full feedback. Okay, that's your opportunity. You submit your paper before. So don't treat it like a rough draft. At a minimum, at least you get a rough draft, you get some feedback, but the ideal way is that you work hard on that paper before the first deadline to submit me what you think is a good paper so you get my best feedback. Not just a few little tips about, well, you're missing this, missing that, and you still need to finish, but that you could say, this is good. Oh, this example is incomplete. You're forgetting this component. Make sure to incorporate this idea. That will be the way. That's why, by the way, these writing assignments actually work out very well if you do a good job with that first assignment. Because that way you get my feedback, and then for the people who do a good job for that first deadline, the second deadline is the final deadline, and if you've done a good job with the first submission, you just incorporate my feedback, and you could pretty much count on full points on that writing assignment. A very, very nice way to boost your grade. And again, for people where math is not their strong point, and now you see how you're going to have to incorporate all these ideas, doing well on the writing assignments is an excellent way to make sure you do well overall in this course. Right? I can't say that strongly enough. We'll get down in the percentages later on, and I'll point that out. But people who do a good job on their writing assignments, it's like they can get C's on their tests and get a B for the class because they did a good job. And they took their time. They didn't rush through their papers. They took their time and they did a good job. So again, 2 deadlines. The first deadline, that's for you to get feedback. You could still send me questions, but I want to make it very clear right now. The people who miss the first deadline send me their paper and say, can't you just read my paper anyway? No. That is the point of the first deadline. I do it all together. I put myself in that mindset so while I'm grading papers and all those ideas stay together, so I'm giving everybody the same advice, I'm keeping you all on same track. So if you miss that deadline, you do not get my feedback. You could still ask questions. You could still get tips, but you cannot just say, will you read this? You have to be very specific. So definitely keep that in mind. So that's how you get how we will respond and return papers. For papers, that'll be very easy. Just send them through email. Word is a preferred option. But to be honest, even if you just had them structured in the email itself, that would work for me. I could still see and guide and still give you all feedback that's necessary. That's normally not an issue. Okay, number 4, writing will be discussed regularly. Again, it's going to keep coming up. So as we go through topics, it's still going to keep coming up. After we get through the first basics of what stats is about, typically after we finish chapter 1, often as we're getting through chapter 2, I'll post a video just about writing in general. So we could separate how to write in a paper. That for any of our formal papers, the full setup, introduction, body, conclusion, that you want to keep that full setup, and that is going to be a part of your grade. That is essential. But when you're given an example, you just jump right in, but how that example has to connect back. Again, we want to have some specifics in mind. So we want to have at least a little bit done so I can be very clear. Here is it what I mean. This is a question I ask, and this is a satisfactory answer. And then same thing when we start looking at situations, and I ask you to speculate. I ask you to write a few sentences about a situation. Any of our tests, when you have written work, you jump right in. There's no introduction, body, conclusion. You just jump right in and start answering. I speculate that because I see older people in this building, I speculate the building might be quieter. Or, again, we'll get to more specific examples. But that will come up. So writing will be discussed a lot throughout the class. Written work will be a significant portion of the grade. It comes up on tests. The writing assignments, it's a part. At least one exam will have a written component. They all have a written component. There's only one big essay though. That's the one thing. All the other writing in the exams, they're a couple of sentences. Give an example. That typically takes a sentence. Tell me a little about this situation. Include speculation. Those would be like 2 to 4 sentence answers. On our final exam, I typically structure a big essay question that takes us back to the beginning, guiding someone through the whole statistical process. That'll be our one essay. But again, we'll talk all about that as we go along. So as you see, writing intensive. There is writing as a part of this class, but it's very, very guided. For people who are worried, like English as a second language, that's not a problem. I still need to be able to understand your structure. So we still can't be bouncing all over the place with our papers. But, grammar is not going to hurt you. I may make some suggestions. Sometimes grammar can affect the flow, and we may just make some minor tweaks there. But grammar, misspelling, things like that, that's not going to hurt you as far as your overall grade. It's just going to be about, can you express your ideas? Can you convey them and organize them? And like I said, that's what we're going to work on. And it's not just for a math class. As we do that here, it's going to be the same thing for any class, for any idea, for any place you need to structure. This will be the thought process you go through. So like I said, this is actually a huge benefit to see writing come up in a non-typical math, in a not typical situation that most people see as a math class. Okay, why are you here? Curricula for which this course is required, general education objectives, course objectives. First, curricula, a bunch. Nursing, health science, public health, criminal justice, liberal arts and science, childhood education, environmental science, psychology. Statistics is everywhere. Any field that collects data, you have to be able to understand some basic statistics. Because even if you don't use it yourself, even if you're not the one collecting the data, you're not the one researching, but it still comes up and you're going to have to use it in your field. So that's where, again, it comes up a lot. Outside of just these particular fields, you're going to see everybody uses statistics. Everybody here is, has a community. So there's government decisions. So, whether you're just a citizen, you look at your local township, you look at your state, there are decisions that are being made at a larger community around you that are being made based off of some statistical situations. That statistics will come up and be used. Maybe it's a local school board decision. Maybe it's something bigger like a citywide decision. It comes up. You are a consumer, right? Everybody buys something. So as a consumer of products, well, maybe you're buying a new TV, you're looking to buy a new house, you're thinking about a new school district by transferring, you're considering another college. There's a lot of information that's available. How do you use it to make good decisions? So that's what I mean. Your individual fields, you as a regular person, it never stops. Statistics is around us. So that's why this is a useful class for anyone. So there are a lot of fields that require this, some because you do need to use statistics yourself, others because statistics is around, but you really want to talk about one of the most practical classes that can help anyone in any field, any area. Statistics is one of them. So our course, general education objectives, well, why? Well, we use analytical reasoning. This class involves critical thinking skills. It involves direct applications. And that's what all this says. Analytical reasoning skills to identify issues or problems, evaluate evidence in order to make informed decisions. That's one of the biggest forms of statistics, one of the biggest uses. Here's the data. What do we do with it? We try and use it smartly to make good decisions. Reason quantitatively and mathematically as required in the fields of interest and in everyday life. Like I said, all those examples. You may be a nursing student, you may be a business student, you may be a science student, and why do I have to know these other things? Well, they're all going to come up. So you're going to see examples that reflect to the field of medicine, to the field of healthcare. You're going to see examples that come up to the fields of business and logistics and accounting. You're going to see examples that come up that treat us as basic consumers. Psychology, social sciences, human interactions. All these things are going to come up. Every subject, every topic, we're going to see examples from all these different areas. So integrating knowledge and skills into their programs of study, using information. Like I said, it's all there. Everything we do connects to all of these objectives. The course objectives, expected learning outcomes. Students will learn to think critically about data. Of course, if we're doing all that stuff, it's going to happen. Select and use graphical and numerical summaries. What do we do with data? Well, we try and summarize it. That'll be something we come up with. Applying standard statistical inference procedures. We're going to learn techniques. Now that we have the data, we summarize it. What do we do with it next? Draw conclusions from such analyses. Like I said, all these things just keep repeating. As we go through chapter 1, chapter 2, we'll still keep seeing these things repeating, and then we'll finally start getting to the more specifics of actually implementing them. So be patient. You want to go through, you're going to want to use your book. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. And you want to be patient to make sure you're absorbing all the necessary knowledge. Here is our textbook. This is, I have the instructor's edition, but if you zoom in right on this portion right here, that's what your version of the textbook looks like. Certainly, I normally post the school bookstore in that first email, so you can get a link there. If you go on campus, you can go check it out. I mean, plenty of other sources as well, but that's the book. You want to make sure you have this book. Reality of life, everybody. Statistics books are all pretty similar. They all have a lot of the same content. They all have a lot of the same instruction, same types of problems. But why do you want this book specifically? Because you want to keep up with the class. Some books just slightly different orders. You want to have direct homework. Like even in our book, I don't assign you every homework problem in our book because some of them get a little carried away. Their examples go a little further than what I hoped for. I want to focus on this component. I want to be clear on what it is I expect you to be able to do. So like I said, some of the homework goes a little above and beyond that, so I don't assign all of it. Some of the homework also keeps referring back, and sometimes I want you to be more focused on that exact immediate topic. So like I said, that's all the reasons you want the book. All the homework is in here. Answers are in the back. But it's not just homework. You need to start reading the book. As I keep saying, examples, understanding the nature of statistics. I say that through the videos, but as a secondary reinforcement, the book does that. You should be reading through the sections. At a minimum, scanning through, going through the extra examples, going through the problem, reading through. Maybe you do the example on your own and then match it with the book. Maybe you just follow along, but you want to be doing those things. That's the way to get the most out of the book and not only prepare you for this class, get you into good habits moving beyond. Tiny little differences. Some people like to scan through the book before they watch the videos. By reading through the book, they get a very, very generic sense. They get a very generic view of what's going on. And then my videos, they let me do the heavy lifting and guide them through the most, what you absolutely need. This is a must. This is how you do it. Some people like to reverse that. They'd rather go through my video first, hear those very specific things, and then use the book as that reminder. As I was saying, the going back, flip through, not just redoing problems. What is that extra study time? Part of that is using the book and flipping through. I highly recommend it. Now, how much should you understand from the book? You should be getting most of the homework. If you don't get all of it, that's okay. Little mistakes come up, and hopefully you can get corrections, but those would be little things that come up. What else do I want to say? But when you're reading, every once in a while, there are some examples that are pretty heavy duty. There's some situations where it's like he gets a little deeper than what we need to. So don't worry too much. You want to get some sense. You want to use this for a supplement, but it's not like this is your Bible and that if there's one line you don't understand, that you need to go back and get extra help. That's going a little above and beyond what you really need. So you use it as a good secondary source, but definitely let my videos guide you through what are the essentials, what you definitely need. Okay, calculators. You need a calculator. There's computation that comes up, and there are a lot of other things calculators can do, but again, we need some basics. If you have a graphing calculator, this is a Texas Instruments graphing calculator. If you have a graphing calculator, there are some extra features. There are some extra computational techniques, like this can compile data for you, kind of like what I was saying with Excel. This has some of those same features. You can use these as a bonus. You cannot use them in place of what I require. So again, when we talk about I expect to see work, if you're jumping ahead, if you're using extra resources online, some of them are teaching you things on the graphing calculator, which I'm not allowing you to use. So you would lose some partial credit for that. Others are just going above and beyond, things that we don't learn or we don't learn yet. So again, you want to make sure you're using the videos, and your online resources are just the extra. If you need a tiny little extra help or you're completely stuck, that's not your main go-to. And that's why either of these calculators are fine. Because the regular computation we're doing is just that. It's regular computation. So these are both Texas Instruments calculators, but really any calculator is just fine. Okay? Oh, actually, I should say, there's a few places where we have some like square roots. So you can't use a 4-function calculator. You need a scientific. But again, nothing special about Texas Instruments calculators, just to make sure you have a calculator to do the basic computation when it comes up. How will you be evaluated? The methods by which you will be evaluated. Okay, these are slight. We're going to change these a little bit. Right now it says exams, 50 in-class performance 50%, writing 20, final 30. We're changing that slightly. We're going to go the in-class exams are 45%, the writing assignments are 25%, and your final exam is still 30%. What are those in-person exams? We're going to have 4 tests. That's it, 4 tests. They're worth different point values. So if you want to know that portion of your grade, it's just points earned divided by points possible. If you get a, say, 50 out of 60 on the first test, do that division. That comes out to roughly an 83. It's like you're in a B, it's a solid grade. But if you got a 50 out of 60 on the first test, and then you get an 80 out of 90 on the second test, that would give you 130 out of, what did I say, 150 points. 130 out of 150. Add your total points earned, divide by your total points possible. That accounts for, again, that different tests are worth different points, and that already encompasses the weight effect. So that's all you have to do for your grade. 45% from the 4 tests. In a few moments, we'll see that there's a very loose schedule, and I'll point out roughly where those tests come up.